Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Burn Your Draft, the podcast exploring the Reed College senior thesis process. I'm Ace Lackey, your podcast producer. This time, you'll hear me interview Lucas Forshee in person in Reed's Performing Arts Building, learning about the history of a poison and the legacies of Reed's chemistry theses.
My name is Lucas Forshee. I'm from the small town of Waldport, Oregon. I thesised in the chemistry department under Bobby O'Brien, and the name of my thesis was Strychnine, History and Synthesis.
What's strychnine?
So strychnine is a poison that has been used. It's used to kill rats, and it was used in the 1904 Olympic marathon as a stimulant or attempted stimulant. Performance-enhancing drug, but what it's kind of most known for in the chemistry field is that it's a very, very complicated molecule, and so whenever there's like a new advancement in like the theory of like organic chemistry, they're like, let's just test it on strychnine and let's see how far we can get with strychnine, and if we can get really far, that means we're good. And so yeah, I wanted to explore both a synthesis of strychnine because Bobby O'Brien, the thesis advisor that I work under, is known for doing synthetic chemistry. But I also wanted to employ some of the liberal arts side of Reed College, and I wanted to explore the history of strychnine.
Why exactly did you choose to work on this?
So specifically, I had already worked with Bobby O'Brien for 2 summers, and so I was pretty familiar with what his lab does, which is basically total synthesis work with a focus on something called convergent synthesis, which means that we take 2 smaller, simpler fragments and then just connect them together. That's kind of like his motif that he works with. And so I wanted to find a molecule that I could start my own project. And over the last summer or 2, we had been working with this type of reaction called an enantioselective epoxidation. So I had been pretty familiar with that reaction, and I wanted to find a synthetic route that maybe had used an enantioselective epoxide and use my knowledge of enantioselective epoxidation to improve that route and just take it as inspiration and go do my own thing.
How did your interests before Reed end up tying into your major and thesis?
So before I came to Reed, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like, unironically, I applied to Reed as a math major. I thought it was just like a safe option. But even before I started my first day of school here, I switched to a bio major. And then throughout the years, I slowly switched from bio to biochem to chemistry. And so I don't know, I just fell in love with the chemistry department. I fell in love with the culture there, and I just like chemistry as a topic. And so that kind of steered my direction towards doing chemistry. There wasn't really anything in strychnine in particular that can find itself in my experiences before Reed. It was the best canvas for me to try to use the tools that I had learned.
I took chemistry for my group 3+ freshman year, and I had fun with it. I'm not sure that I could do an entire major on it, obviously, but
yes. It can be intense. Who did you have?
Mir.
Oh, love Mir. Yes, Bobby's just started out at Reed, so he's been camped out in Mir's lab. And so Mir was kind enough to give us 2 small fume hoods for us to do our chemistry in, which, shout out Mir.
You need a lot of fume hoods.
Yes. No, we had to come up with a lot of different strategies to try to fit so many theses in such a small amount of space.
That's something that before you I interviewed 3 separate humanities majors, like social sciences. Not an issue there.
Oh, yes.
Though I imagine you had very different surprises throughout the process that
100%.
made things challenging.
Yeah.
So what was that process, and what skills did you either acquire or strengthen during it?
I think a lot of the in-lab skills that I used, I had already been introduced to in the 2 summers that I had worked with Bobby, and so that I felt confident in them enough to start doing things more independently. Like, Bobby allowed me, if there was a lab partner in the lab at a time, to just do most of the chemistry myself, which I quite enjoyed doing. And I think one of the skills that this project really helped me with is being able to understand what it meant to actually perform a large project. From the very beginning, being able to sketch out what 8 months down the road looks like, and the different goals you have to hit at those specific points in that 8 months, was and the amount of work it takes to get to each one of those. And just how to conceptualize a large project, I think, is something that you can't really be taught. You have to kind of just get your hands dirty with. And that is definitely something I am thankful for with this thesis.
What did the average day of working on it look like? Was it mostly lab work and then mostly writing, or was it a mix throughout the process, or?
So I tried to do lab work. I tried to fit it in as wherever I could. I was also taking a full load of classes in addition to this. And so I didn't really have like a particular time of day each day, that like a structured time that I could go into lab. It was kind of just whenever I had free time. So instead of hanging out with friends, I was in the lab, which I enjoyed, and so it was not that big of a deal. So yeah, I just was in the lab as much as I could be, and like Bobby O'Brien always says, the amount of like work you get done on a synthetic project is directly proportional to the amount of time you spend in lab. And so I wanted to get a lot done, and so I knew that I had to spend a lot of time in lab, and so I just, whenever I had the chance, I did.
Well, that's okay. The chemicals are your friends.
Yes.
What advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of the project, having now completed it?
Factor in time for yourself and for having breaks, because when you are in that initial planning phase, you aren't really thinking about how you're going to feel 7 months in, and you're like really, really tired and like, oh, I cannot believe I scheduled myself to do this like 7 months ago when I thought I could like do all this. And so be realistic in what you can do is what I would tell myself. And also I would tell myself for the writing portion of it to try to hammer out a stronger like research question, because that would have saved, I'd say, like a good 2-3 months of like groping through the literature, trying to find like, what the hell am I even trying to write about? So having a more concise question to like build off of probably would have helped.
What were the unexpected challenges that you encountered in the process, and how did you end up dealing with them?
One of the big hurdle that I had to overcome during this happened thankfully very early in the process. Initially, me and Bobby had sketched out the synthetic pathway to get to our epoxide. It was going to be like a 3-step synthesis. All 3 steps were going to be completely novel. We had worked this out because he had a conference, a chemistry conference, and I was the learning assistant for that conference. And so after the conference, which was in Elliott, we would like work on the blackboards trying to map out our routes. It was pretty cool. But I tried the first step of that synthesis and it just did not work, like at all. Like we were going for a kinetic product, but we ended up getting the thermodynamic, completely converted to the thermodynamic product. And so me and Bobby sat down and he basically told me, you can either try to continue to butt your head up against this wall and try to get this reaction working, but we don't even know if the second step in this route is going to work, and we don't know if the third route is going to work. So you could just bump your head up against this wall for it just to fall apart in the next step, or you could try something that's a bit more safe but will like promise you results, but you have to completely abandon all your work. And I decided to eat the sunk cost and completely jump ship to a new route, which ended up bearing fruit, thankfully.
I'm glad it did.
Yes.
I can only imagine how frustrating it would have been if you put all this time into one thing, it didn't work, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to try this other thing. That also just doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, that is actually a very big issue in synthetic chemistry, especially with PhD minors. People that are doing PhDs in synthetic chemistry, there's a lot of like dropout rate and rates, like higher rates of depression, because things like that can occur where you can spend a year, like 2 years on a project, and then one step just doesn't work and you have to go completely back to the drawing board.
If I tried like 2-3 things and none of it was working, I feel like that's the point at which I'd consider changing my thesis topic.
Yeah. But sometimes you get like 6 months in and you're like, oh, I just have to like say it didn't work.
What is the outcome of your project? What kind of format did your thesis take, and is it different than what you expected it would be when you started?
I knew that I wanted to have, from the very beginning, two parts of my thesis. I wanted to have like a written portion of it, which I didn't really know what the written portion was going to be in the beginning, but I knew that I wanted it. And then I also, the lab portion of it. And for the lab portion, I knew that I was not going to be able to synthesize strychnine. That's a process that usually, like a full synthesis of a molecule of that complexity takes years of a dedicated full lab group to be able to accomplish. So I entertained zero fantasies of being able to do it by myself. And so what I wanted to do for that project was I just wanted to get as far as I could. I didn't want to leave anything in the tank. I just wanted to get as far as I could so that there was a foundation for whoever wanted to pick it up in Bobby's lab. And I think somebody has for this summer research, which is exciting. And so that side of the project, I think, turned out kind of exactly how I wanted it to from the beginning. But the writing side of things, like I'd initially kicked around like a ton of different ideas, and it wasn't really until winter break that I chose, like finally started to write actually. And it turned out that I was writing a history, and that was very exciting. It was cool going into the stacks. Like literally the stacks at Reed had like old German journals from the 1800s that had these like research papers about strychnine, and I could like that I had to translate through Google Translate, and that was very exciting to be able to do and very rewarding, and so that was cool.
Oh geez, Google Translate.
Yes.
Did it occur to you at all to ask somebody from the German department?
I had thought about it, but at that point I was like nearing the end of my project, and I was nearing the end of the amount of energy that I could like give some of this more supplementary work on my thesis. So I decided to let it go.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm talking to other people who are like, yeah, no, we had to hire a research assistant in another country. I like had to go over there over winter break, whatever. And it's just like, yeah, I ran the 1800s papers through Google Translate. Man, I wish every thesis was that simple.
Yeah, it was quite funny. One of the summers that I worked for Bobby, we had found this reaction that like we needed. Like this was the perfect reaction. But the paper was from like the 60s, and it was entirely in German. And do you know who Violet Burns is? She was a chemistry major that graduated my same year, but we knew that she speaks German, and so we found her in the building and told her, like, you need to come here and translate this for us. And so, yeah, thankfully she was able to translate it, and we were able to get the reaction. But yes.
How common is that in chemistry for there to be what you're looking for out there and it to just be?
Honestly, not that common, just because chemistry is a fast-moving field, and for the most part, like research that's even a decade or 2 decades old is like old hat. And so it was kind of like a very specific scenario we were in where we had no other options. So we were digging into the old literature to find anything.
Why is this project important? Who will this impact eventually?
It's important on a few levels. Like for me personally, I think it's important just because I wanted to have a project that was completely my own. Like I wanted to, plant a seed that would maybe one day grow into a nice big tree. And so that, I think it's importance in that sense. And I think in another sense, it's importance to the Bobby O'Brien lab group. Like I said earlier, his whole kind of thing is this natural product synthesis, specifically with convergent synthesis in mind. And so I think this is another one of these projects that more thesis students can pick up in the future. I know that some of the thesis students that I graduated alongside of did their thesis as a continuation of projects that were in Bobby O'Brien's lab, and they were able to find some really cool things because they were, starting on top of research, and so they could just hit the ground running and do some really cool things. And I did not have that luxury with my thesis just because I had to start from scratch. So hopefully I can aid some, poor senior somewhere that just wants to get thesis done.
Do those projects tend to be picked up pretty quickly within a year or two of the thesis getting completed, or do you see theses from, 5-10 years back getting picked up?
Specifically for Bobby, so I was part of his first group of students. He's relatively new. He's only been around for 2 years. And so I can't speak on that specific question. I know that other chemistry theses, in Mears' lab specifically, they are building off of theses that are like many, many years old. Like Criselda's thesis, she did a fantastic thesis that was based off of the work of somebody that had previously been in Mir's lab, and that work was done by someone that was previously in Mir's lab. And so there's some really strong connection that the chemistry has, some continuation, and I'm crossing my fingers that my project gets added to one of those lots.
I mean, considering that it seems like that was your intention from the beginning, I'm really hoping it does.
Yeah, I don't really know how it's been going, but I know that Noah has been working on it, so shout out Noah.
How do you think your thesis experience will inform your life after Reed?
It has taught me that I love writing and that I want at some point in my career to be a writer in some capacity. And at the current moment, I am working in the biotech industry. I do want to go back to education. I want to get a PhD at some point, basically chasing the same high that I got with my thesis. I quite enjoyed this process, and I think being able to do this more in a long-term thing, not being held down to the 8-month deadline, and also having to take 4 other classes while doing thesis, I think would be a lot better for my mental health, and which sounds more exciting. But at the moment, I think I'm going to wait out this current presidential administration before I really commit to academics again.
So what are your plans for this summer?
I'm working at a biotech company called Twist Bioscience. I'm in their manufacturing department. I make genes, which is pretty cool. So I came back to bio. So I did a full loop. I started bio, went in chemistry, now I'm back to bio. And I've been enjoying that. I think Reed is, I loved Reed, but it can be a lot sometimes. It can be very rigorous. And I'm still planning on auditing Reed classes because my job is in Portland, because I love the conference style class at Reed so much, but I am going to take some time off of the academic schedule.
In 30 years, what will go through your mind when you read through your thesis?
Probably that it is the work of a very youthful and inexperienced person. Hopefully I will look back and see it as something that, a first step as in something much greater. And like I said earlier, I wanted this thesis to be something that I could be proud of, that I gave my all to. And no matter how much this ages, and it's aged. I brought it with me and I was reading it beforehand, and there's some points where I'm I wish I could change that, or I wouldn't have worded it like that if I could still edit it. But I think in 30 years from now, I'll have a lot more of those complaints, but at the end of the day, I will be proud that I gave it my all during thesis.
What advice do you have for listeners who are either starting Reed or starting their own senior thesis process?
Yeah, I think take advantage of the opportunity we're given, especially now with how education is going and decreasing literacy rates. I think we owe it to ourselves to educate ourselves. And I think Reed gives us this perfect opportunity in place to flex our brain muscles. And I think the thesis project in general is such a unique opportunity. And I would be remiss to say, you have to give it your all. No half measures. That at least was my philosophy, because it's something to be proud of. And whenever I have self-doubts, or that I have doubts that maybe, I can't do this or whatever, what have you, I have a physical book that serves as a reminder that I can get projects done, and that I can do things on time, and then I can write if I, set my mind to it. And that's I enjoy that.
And it's not just that you have it. That book is in a library, permanently part of record, that you can do this.
Yes, that feels good. That it boosts my confidence.
Is there anyone that you want to thank or acknowledge for helping you with the thesis process?
Yeah, first and foremost, Bobby O'Brien. He has been a fantastic thesis advisor. He's been a fantastic mentor in general. I couldn't have asked for a better educational situation. And I think during thesis, he gave me the right amount of space. He checked in on me when he needed to, but he also had confidence in me and trusted me. And that is something I intensely respect, that I think confidence and trust are big parts of the Reed ethos. I'd like to shout out my girlfriend, Lindsay Babcock. She has been a rock for me. She was a rock for me during this whole thesis situation. I'd like to shout out Sadesh, Joe, and Alaric. We took basically every single chemistry class together, literally from Chem 101 all the way to quantum mechanics, and all in the Chem 301 room. We literally sat in the same spot for 4 years straight. Like, I have pictures of the whiteboard like that I've taken as notes from the exact same position for 4 classes, all with the back of Sid's head and all the frame for every single one of them. And so, yeah, my chemistry experience has been influenced by them, and I'd like to thank them for that.
Do you have any final thoughts?
I don't think I do. Let me think. Yeah, shout out Reed College. I can't imagine, like 4 years ago, I couldn't have imagined where I am now. And I think Reed has opened a lot of doors for me, and it has opened my eyes to the world. I grew up in a very small town on the Oregon coast, and so I wasn't really exposed to much. And coming here, I was exposed to almost too much, I would say. But I think it was worth it, and it gave me a place where I can explore the things that I find interesting, and I couldn't ask for anything more than that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I hope that in the next few years, this continues to be positive, that you or somebody else is able to pick it back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully things look better in a couple years for education. But when they start picking up, I will definitely come back. And I will still continue to audit classes at Reed because love the conference.
Yeah, so maybe people will see you around.
Yeah, I might be in your class next year.
I'll keep looking around for you in classes next year, Lucas, as I'm working on my own thesis. Thank you again for the interview. If you enjoyed today's episode, I hope you'll join us again to hear from more students and alumni about what it means to burn your draft. Be sure to subscribe, check out our X, Facebook, and Instagram pages, and write a review on Apple Podcasts. Burn Your Draft is a production of Reed College and the Center for Life Beyond Reed. Created jointly by students, alumni, and staff, this episode was produced and engineered by me, Reed College student Ace Lackey. Our executive producer is Seth Paskin, class of 1990, with technical advising from Joe Janica. Our project manager is Nate Martin, staff member and class of 2016. Music by Jack Salvucci, class of 2020, and podcast art by alumni Henry Gottschlich and Liliane Pham. This podcast was made possible by a gift from Seth Paskin.